Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch regular City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin with our invocation, just want to share some sad news in our community. On Sunday afternoon, the longest-serving mayor in the history of Farmers Branch, Bob Phelps, tragically passed away. He served 9 years as City Council, 15 years as mayor, and his imprint is all over the city, whether it's buildings, facilities, parks, streets, developments. He was truly one of a kind, and he loved his wife, he loved his family, he loved the Lord, and more importantly, he loved Farmers Branch. And we're truly going to miss him. And, I just want to ask everyone to keep him and his family in his prayers. And during items of community interest, we will share with you all the details of his funeral service and arrangements. But as normal, we will begin with our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. So if I could ask you all to please stand. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your blessing as we gather. We ask you to watch over the Phelps family as they navigate this difficult time. We ask you to watch over our first responders. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you clearly show us the way to provide good governance for our community. We ask that you grant us all grace, patience, and prudence as we plan for our city, our residents, and our businesses. We ask all this in your name, Lord. Amen. Amen. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. So E1 is consider accepting the You Are Beautiful public art piece donation and take appropriate action. The You Are Beautiful campaign began in 2002 as a sticker that spreads a hopeful message throughout public art. Matthew Hoffman, a Chicago-based artist, is the creator of the You Are Beautiful campaign. The goal of this initiative is to be a positive force and transmit a simple idea. Everyone deserves to feel good with who they are. This particular design of the You Are Beautiful piece is a limited edition 4-foot by 16-foot installation. In fact, this piece is so limited that they only have one per state issued. Farmers Branch resident Sarah LeClaire secured Texas's You Are Beautiful art piece and would like to donate it to the city of Farmers Branch with the value of the donation of the piece placed at $3,500. Is Sarah here? Come on. Yeah, Jeff, do we have a picture of the piece? Oh, it's out there. Okay. Sarah, if you want to come up. So, you gotta get your due. So, Sarah, on behalf of me, the City Council, and everyone else, we just want to say thank you for this very generous gift. As our Art and Culture Commission has done a great job expanding art and doing other things. I think, this is something that they're going to be very proud of, especially as we've authorized more art installations like this to be allowed throughout the city. It's something that is not only going to beautify, but hopefully bring that positive image that you're looking to impart here. And so with that, I'll let you say a few words before we ask council to accept such a generous donation.
I don't know if I prepared very much, but I saw this installation in Chicago and really wanted to bring one to where I live. And so contacted them, and I'm really excited to have it here in our new home in Farmers Branch. So thank you for taking a look, and I hope you'll stop by when it's installed as well.
So with that, I move to accept the donation of the You Are Beautiful public art piece for display at the Grove in Mustang Station.
Mayor, I'll second that motion.
I have a second by Councilmember Merritt. Is there any more discussion? All in favor? Yeah, just mark your vote. Passes unanimously. I also voted. It's exciting. Doesn't count though, so. Next is E2, presentation of the awards to the winners in the 2022 Art Scavenger Hunt. I guess, yeah. So, you want all the winners to come up, Maria? So all the winners, come on up. The Farmers Branch Arts and Culture Committee, in conjunction with the Parks and Recreation Department, held the second annual Art Scavenger Hunt from September 10th to October 2nd. A total of 15 photos of works of art were placed in various parks, landmarks, and outside several businesses in Farmers Branch. Individuals and families had the opportunity to explore Farmers Branch and submit their findings for a prize. There was no cost to participate in the activity. Several families mentioned they visited parts of Farmers Branch they had never seen before or really enjoyed the opportunity to bond with their family during this activity. The winning individuals, families, had a perfect score. And before we announce them, Maria, do you have anything you want to say? Or?
Just want to thank everyone for participating. Got lots of great feedback, and we've got a few families who participated last year, and I also want to thank the Art and Culture Committee for organizing this scavenger hunt. It's been a lot of fun, and we hope to do this again next year, so thank you.
So our winners. First up is Johnny Jackson. Next up is siblings Issa Griffin and Isley Johnson. Johnson. So next up is Avery and Kennedy Root. Next is the Ramos family with Anna, Roy, Nicholas, and Nicole. Great timing. And last is the McCoppin family, Amy and Janelle. So our 2022 Art and Scavenger Hunt winners.
Oh, go front, Anna. Go front. You need to be in there. All right. Okay, Maria, get it. Yeah. There we go. Got it. Thank you.
Next is our report on items of community interest. Mr. Land.
Thank you, Mayor. So after the last council meeting, I received my first compliment as interim city manager. That was because I had Jeff Brady deliver the items of community interest. So here's my ovation.
I was over-modulated last night, so I'll try and back off the mic a little bit. City Manager's report on behalf of Interim City Manager John Land. Calling all ghouls and goblins, haunting season is here, and our annual Halloween in the Park extravaganza will be this Saturday, October 29th from 5 to 10 p.m. with the Haunted Hedge opening at sundown. Yeah. Admission is free for residents with a Boo Pass and $5 for non-residents. New this year, Sensoryville, which allows kids to dive into tactile and adaptive games. Have you ever considered serving the city by volunteering your time on a board or commission? Well, you should. Our Historical Park Board, Parks and Recreation Board, and Senior Advisory Board all have vacancies and are accepting applications. Go to fbboards.com for more information. The Recreation Center Phase 2 renovations have begun, and while the indoor track is now closed for construction, we do have an alternative to accommodate members downstairs in the gym every day. Also keep in mind this is Fire Prevention Month here in Farmers Branch, so it's time to check the batteries in your home smoke detectors and plan that emergency evacuation route. Fire won't wait. Plan your escape. Also, early voting is now underway at Brookhaven campus, and the last day will be November 4th. Keep that in mind. Election day, of course, will be Tuesday, November 8th. Polls will be open that day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Also, Farmers Branch residents are invited to a free shredding event hosted by Farmers Branch Sustainability on Saturday, October 29th, right here at City Hall from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Please remember, it's only for residents and sensitive documents only. No magazines or junk mail. It's important. Join members of our Farmers Branch Police Department for casual coffee and conversation on Wednesday, November 2nd from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Native Coffee on Alpha Road. No agenda, no speeches, just a chance to get to know your local first responders. That's Wednesday, November 2nd. Also, join us for a very special Veterans Day celebration on Friday, November 11th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Liberty Plaza. We will have keynote speakers, live performances, and a laser light show to illuminate the night sky and honor our veterans. And lastly, as Mayor Dye mentioned just a few minutes ago, Farmers Branch lost a true leader over the weekend. Former Mayor Bob Phelps passed away Sunday. He was our 12th and longest serving mayor of Farmers Branch, overseeing city business for a total of 18 years. He retired in 2008, and the city named the Fire Administration Building in his honor. His celebration of life will be this Monday, October 31st at 2 p.m. at First Baptist Church at the Fields in Carrollton. And as always, you can sign up for City e-News at farmersbranchtx.gov.
Hey, you never get applause, so.
I know. Yeah. Anything for applause.
Yeah. Okay, before we move on to citizen comments, I just want to make an announcement that earlier this evening, we received the resignation letter from Councilmember Williams. As such, that'll make Section 2.02 and 2.19 of the charter a moot point. We will take action on this when we take action from executive session, but I did want to bring this to everyone's attention that we've kind of resolved that issue and have a plan forward, and we'll make further announcements towards the end of the meeting on how that will all play out. So with that, we will move on to citizen comments. There's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. No disparaging or inflammatory remarks directed at any member of City Council or staff will be allowed. Louder. Okay. First up is David Silver.
Good evening, David Silver, 2879 Millwood Circle. I don't want to be disparaging, but this has to be said. It's very, very important. Last time I spoke to council, I commented about the poor council to citizen communication. It has improved, but it can still be better, and I ask that you please continue to improve communications. I'd like to comment next on the FBTX Connect and our horrible, disingenuous, and inconsistent code enforcement department. Leo, please get a grip on things or move along, as you and your crew, not doing your jobs, are stealing from the good citizens of Farmers Branch. Why do I say this? When it was introduced, we were promised that when the app was live, we would remain anonymous, even though we were forced to leave our names and phone numbers, and it has failed miserably. To those of you who are cancel culture vultures out there, I did call out our illustrious council member Williams's home, or former home, on Sunday, October the 2nd, for code violations. On the driveway were both the home's recycling and trash bins, as well as 3 to 4 cubic yards of rubbish from inside the home. Our recycling and green grabber day is on Friday. This again took place on Sunday. The following week, I reported the bins being out again on Monday, October the 10th, and with that entry to FBTX Connect, I let Councilwoman Williams off the hook. But here's the scary part, and this is what every one of us needs to be concerned with. On Wednesday, October 12th, I received a letter in my mailbox postmarked October 11 with no return address on it. My privacy has been illegally compromised, and this letter is retaliation and harassment. This letter reads, reference your 2 complaints to the City of Farmers Branch Code Enforcement at 2834 Millwood Drive. The Williamses have not owned the house since 11:59 p.m. September 29, 2022. You should check with those new homeowners before you try to link violations to Councilwoman Williams. It's quite obvious you're trying so hard to make Williams look bad instead of actually addressing a code problem from a neighbor. It's my belief that this letter was directly from Tracy Williams, or at least one of her, with her urging, penned by one of her minions. If not from her, how would anyone be aware of the date and time that she and her family moved from 2834 Millwood to the Brickyards apartment and no longer own the home? It's a big question. Where is my promised privacy? Not only is this a personal threat to me and my family, but it's also 100% failure by Farmers Branch, City Council, the FB Texas Connect app to secure my anonymity as promised and guaranteed.
Mr. Silver, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Pamela Silver.
I'm going to read a little faster because I have a few more comments to say. I recently shared some photos of our immediate neighbors' poor care of their rental property with Councilwoman Tracy Williams. I have more pictures of the deplorable situation in my phone than of my grandchildren, but just as happy to share them afterward or post online for your viewing pleasure. Tracy's response with a condescending smile was she did not have a problem with our neighbors housing a portable commercial dumpster on the property, constantly piled with refuse from their job site, which usually sits full for the weekend. Nor did she have a problem with allowing the renters to conduct commercial business operations from their rental property, including storage and staging their materials and commercial construction equipment. They run over our yard, dismembering flower bed blocks and just throwing them back in our yard. I refuse to spend any more money on my property, and I've spent a lot lately and about to spend a lot more when renters degrade their rental property as they have. Their employees report to work at the residence 7 days a week and have previously allowed at least one employee to sleep in his truck overnight in the drive, and the police just let it go because they did not want us to suffer retaliation. Get that? How does that support Farmers Branch programs to deter predators from residing in Farmers Branch? Animal fanatics should know that they allow a small dachshund puppy to run around this unsafe environment when they are loading and unloading equipment and materials. No one from code monitors all of the times the big gray truck is inoperable for days and weeks. Now that Tracy has allegedly sold her home to an entity to use it for a short-term rental service, ergo VRBO, this epitomizes that she does not care about her former neighbors or the neighborhood she represents. It is my opinion many renters simply do not seem to care about our neighborhoods or keeping up the properties that we, the property owners, so dearly have invested our lives and careers in sustaining. Mine is 60 years in the same property. The renters move on, leaving a deteriorated property in their wake. It seems more and more renters are running commercial landscaping construction businesses from their rental residences in Farmers Branch because the city allows that loophole. If you want to run a commercial business, rent an office or storage space and get a business deduction when you file your income tax. That is, if you file your taxes. I'm happy to be a part of a committee that supports citizens' involvement. Leo refuses to meet, much less acknowledge us, which is unacceptable. It took us 3 years to get through the wall battle. I get the city is a business, but the council and employees here need to remember they serve us. In summation, the taxes we are paying to live in a trailer park are unacceptable, and the fact that the council did not lower the rate when they had the perfect time and opportunity leads me to believe that the FBI should review the
Ms. Silver,
situation,
thank you.
as well as any possible
very much.
conflict of interest. I'm headed home to my lovely trailer park in Farmers Branch.
Next up is Ellen Thielen. Ellen Thielen.
Ellen Thielen, 12935 Epsfield Road, Farmers Branch. Well, this is my third meeting that I've been to discussing support for different redistricting plans. I've heard lots of support for plans 8 and 9, mostly 9. I have heard absolutely no support for plan 7, which divides neighborhoods and doesn't follow the city charter. And yet it seems to be my understanding that the mayor and the city council are strongly supporting plan 7. And I'm confused as to why this is so. So Mayor Dye, in his invocation tonight, asked for good governance. If refusing to listen to your constituents and voting for a plan that mostly no one wants that I've heard, except for the mayor and a few city councilmen, I would suggest you would serve us better by just not voting at all, or possibly getting another job that doesn't consider deal with representing the people that you serve.
Thank you very much. Next is Pat Edmonston. Okay, you had 2 down, so I'll get you on the second round, though. Next up is Beverly Nelson.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Nelson, and my family and I reside at 3334 Rolling Knoll Drive in Farmers Branch. Mayor Dye, honorable council members, Mr. Land, Mr. Smith, and fellow Farmers Branch citizens, I attended the October 11th City Council meeting, during which Farmers Branch resident Betty Szypinski read aloud an email response penned by Mayor Dye. Mayor Dye's rancorous and bitter words rang loudly in these chambers and are words that have not escaped me these past 2 weeks. Mayor Dye, you, a public servant, told Ms. Szypinski, a respected elder in this community, that she did not matter to you. Your exact words were, "I think so little of you." I think about the many public servants in Farmers Branch, and I try to imagine a scenario in which these words would ever be uttered. I think so little of you. Would a Farmers Branch police officer say this to the local business owner who was robbed at gunpoint? Would Chief Latimer say these words to the elderly neighbor being pulled from a house fire? I think so little of you. Would a teacher at R.L. Turner High even think to utter these words to the student who comes to him seeking help? The simple answer is no. No, they would not. The police officer would say, I will protect you. I'm sure Chief Latimer would say, I will get you to safety. And that teacher would say, I will not let you fail. But Mayor Dye, it would be my wish to say that you made an isolated error in judgment when you sent your note to Ms. Subinski, and that if you had it to do all over again, you would have instead said, I will listen to you. I will respect your voice. I will represent you. I am afraid, however, that this is not an isolated case, and you likely do not regret your words, because I have witnessed your poor treatment of Farmers Branch citizens at past council meetings, and some of those citizens I call my friends. Enough is enough. We need dedicated, respectful, and courageous leadership, and we need it now. I call for your removal from the position of mayor pursuant to Section 2-285 of the Farmers Branch Code of Ethics and Section 2.02 of the City Charter for your knowing ethics violations. And finally, honorable council members, I trust that you understand that if you choose to sit by in silence on this matter, then you are complicit. Thank you.
Next up is Rick Johnson.
Rick Johnson, Harley Drive, Farmers Branch, Texas. I second that motion, absolutely. You know, this is the council, most of you, the two new ones, not so much. They're fine. The problem that we have is we were sent all these campaign notices about how you were going to represent the citizens, how you were going to be open and, you know, take all of our opinions into account, how you were going to run the place different. Well, congratulations, you ran us into the ground. I think we're done with this experiment. And absolutely, it's been horrible. Redistricting doesn't have to be like this. Do you realize that you're fixing to stick all the people, if you vote on map 7, that have money in this city, basically, you're going to stick them all together and you're going to create a poor district? Do you realize that you're going to have the potential to have 2 representatives from Mercer Crossing area? That's 1/5 of the city. You know, the problem that's going on here is there is so much stuff. We could be here all night. When you have a city manager that goes to a block party that's turned around and says, hey, I'm moving out of the district, and he knows this before the last meeting, then he turns around and acts like, oh, wow. You know, why wasn't it brought to the forefront? How come the city attorney wasn't notified beforehand? Why do we keep on going through this? You're not serving the people who elected you. You're self-serving, which is wrong. You know, Farmers Branch, you used to be able to drive into here, and you knew you were in Farmers Branch by the way it looked, how it was. And people that have just moved here in the last 6 or 7 years, Farmers Branch never looked like this. This place looks horrible. There are a lot of nice things and attributes and stuff, but I'm glad that you erected the signs, so at least now we know when we come into Farmers Branch. So, you know, it's time to clean house. The 2 newly elected ones are only the beginning. And you know what? Do us all a favor. Just resign and leave. Thank you.
Next is Kevin Caldwell.
Kevin Caldwell, Tanglewood Drive. What's sad is there tends to be a trend tonight, but it's not just tonight, it's been going on for some period of time. and it's not rocket science. If you don't listen to the people that have put you where you are, you'll pay the price. I mentioned months ago at this podium that we've become a society, and we acknowledge that. We've become a society where there's no negative consequence for bad behavior. Those are powerful words. It's pretty simple, but look around at all levels, in families, in government, in schools, local levels, national levels. It can all be boiled down to that. There's no negative consequence for bad behavior. Beverly mentioned the young lady, 80 some odd years young, that came before Mayor Dye that you had conversations with. What the people behind me don't know is one of our council people on my left came to her aid. And let me just share the words, because there's not supposed to be any disparaging comments from this podium tonight, but let me share some that are coming from that side of the podium. This council person that came to her aid sent a note to the mayor. It said, "What a pompous, disrespectful, unnecessary, and embarrassing response." Maybe she got confused. It was a busy night. She could have said, or you could have said, "I called your name at the appropriate time and you were not there. We then saw you coming across the parking lot as your name was called. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding." Instead, you took the opportunity to insult her directly and take a jab at Farmers Branch residents that disagree with you, Mayor Dye. This is division. This is division. She does not have the power of the position to divide, but you certainly do, and you took advantage of that in your response. Regardless of her views, take the high road, and at the minimum, exercise professionalism. You owe an apology. You responded to this council person, "Listen here, Dick," and I don't believe that's his name, actually. I think that's a disparaging comment. You know you're new to being involved in this community, so don't act like you know everything. This is normal behavior and commentary from your side and those people. I don't know her, you, or anybody else anything. Don't come in here on your high horse and think you're on some moral high ground. Take your head out of Terry's ass for 1 minute, and you'll realize life in this town isn't what you currently believe. You speak for a very small minority. Well, believe me, this company behind me here doesn't consider themselves to be a small minority. Thank you.
Next is Vicki Harrison.
Vicki Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way. It's a sad night tonight for a lot of reasons.
Hold the microphone.
Sorry. Can I start over?
Yes.
With my 3 minutes?
Yes.
It's a sad night tonight for two reasons. First of all, it's fitting to celebrate and honor the former Mayor Bob Phelps, who served the people of Farmers Branch with respect, humility, dignity, integrity, fairness, equanimity, never seeking power or recognition. Always cordial, engaged, open, and he respected the acumen and wisdom of his residents. His passing is sad, but sadder still is the behavior of the current mayor and city council. Fast forward to tonight, we have an increasing lack of transparency, inclusion, and little respect for the charter and the code of ethics. You ignore the code of ethics as a council if you don't call out the mayor when his behavior is inappropriate. You're not doing your job. Screaming, nastiness, bulliness, disrespect have become commonplace at council meetings and even in study sessions between yourselves. What a terrible example. It's an embarrassment that this is our city and the world and the other cities can look at this and see what a mess this is. We see the council unwilling to openly acknowledge the violations. They take no action. I need to strike this part because it's been taken care of. But it should be an ethics violation when a council person lies. If they lie about where they are or why they want to Zoom, that should be a violation of the code of ethics. The charter should be vigorously defended and enforced as the rule of law. If this council does not do that, then you run the risk of the city having legal action taken against you. And the state does say that HBA number 2840, a governmental body may not prohibit public criticism of another governmental body, including criticism of acts, omissions, policies, procedures, programs, and services. You try to keep people from complaining. That is not appropriate. And this behavior needs to stop. I certainly agree with the previous speaker that if you can't follow the rule of law, you need to resign.
Next is James Lockridge.
Wow. I came here with an issue tonight that I had a resolution for, but I'm going to put my stuff aside because there's something a little bit more important out here tonight. One is City Council, stop. Respect these people. Can't do it, go away tonight. Plain and simple. Merritt, I'm going to bring code of ethics on you. You called out a citizen at a City Council meeting. Okay, I get that there was a lady called out, bad things were done. But let's get on everybody, okay? The next City Council member I see outside and they tell me they can't see me or speak to me or be around me because it doesn't look good, horse shit, okay? Plain and simple. I'm tired of it. I'm a citizen in Farmers Branch. Now I'm gonna rock this boat and I'm gonna shake you all out. I'm gonna hold you accountable for your district and for what you're doing, and I'm gonna be there every step of the way. I don't care what it takes. Now, that aside, we have a bigger problem. TxDOT has a stockpile. I went to it. John Land went to it. Omar went to it. Guys, we need your help. What's going on with City Council stabbing each other in the back, cutting each other's heads off and disrespecting the people? Well, that's all fine and dandy. There's a lot of people supporting that, but I need some help with the stockpile. City Council, we need to step up. We need to help that stockpile go away. We need to help our residents immediately. Now, TxDOT's going to blow us off 100%. Okay, they did. I went to that meeting. They've got options. They know they do. They say they don't want them. Use them. But we need help. Please come forward. Stop stabbing each other. Stop disrespecting the citizens and step forward, or I will step forward 100%, full force. And I will be on a high horse. Thank you.
Next is Kirk Manley.
Good evening, I'm Kirk Manley, 2936 South Sunback Circle. The City of Farmers Branch is aware of the TxDOT stockpile at Josie and LBJ, and thank you for taking the responsibility of maintaining the property since TxDOT won't do it, the mowing of the trash. TxDOT has a different definition of maintain than the city. It appears that TxDOT is only going to mow the property twice a year. The city's hands are tied in terms of getting TxDOT to comply with city codes. So thank you for stepping up and finding the funding to do the right thing. The stockpile is an eyesore. We can all agree on that. And it is a source of dust that gets deposited on the neighbors to the north every time you have a prevailing south wind or when the stockpile is disturbed with earth-moving equipment. The ameliorative steps that TxDOT and Lone Star contractors are taking were not proactive in nature, but only initiated once the complaint started. The watering of the stockpile began about 2 weeks ago, well after the stockpile was created and subsequently reduced in height, FYI. Reducing the stockpile height does not reduce the surface area. Simple math. One other step that TxDOT and Lone Star contractors have agreed to is to initiate the showering with water of the bucket loads of the dirt and rock when it's transferred to a rock hauler for removal. I have not seen this to date, and I live right there 80 feet from it. I'll be watching to see if that happens. Lastly, I was remiss in not addressing the stockpile and the collateral dust issues when it occurred during the LBJ expansion. We endured it and recovered. And as the saying goes, with growth comes inconvenience. Never did it cross my mind that a second round would occur in 2022. I'm asking the City of Farmers Branch City Council and administration to engage the state-level entities to take action so this does not happen again. Unfortunately, TxDOT has the political power to do what it wants without any consequences. Farmers Branch has endured enough. If the state's going to allow TxDOT to continue this unfettered way of doing business, then take it elsewhere. TxDOT needs to share this wealth of having a 50-foot pile of rock and dirt with somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Betty Sapinski.
Betty Sapinski, 13232 Kerr Trail. Good evening, Mayor Dye, councilman, city attorney, city manager, but the wonderful citizens of Farmers Branch. I'm here to face you, Mayor Dye. You have accused me of a faction group. You have accused me of lying about records. If you'd like to come to my house, I've got book after book. I served on the Charter Review. I've served on other committees. Maybe it's the fight that I led to save our holiday park. He served on the P&Z at that time. I don't appreciate you accusing me, a citizen of Farmers Branch for 45 years, of a liar and being of a faction group. I think you need to study what you are. Thank you.
Next is Joseph Rigel. Sorry, Regal.
My name is Joseph Regal, 13647 Greystone Drive. I've been a resident of Farmers Branch for 7 years. Is being right always the right thing? Is being right always the right thing? This past summer, I joined the rec center. And I was super excited because they had an indoor track. It's 110 degrees outside, and I could run inside. And actually, they have 3 lanes there. There's one on the inside for walkers. There's one on the outside for runners. And I'm a runner, and there's also a middle lane. So I'm over there super excited. I'm running for the first time, the very first time at the rec center, running on the outside lane for runners, and all of a sudden I come across this walker in the runner's lane. And I mentioned to him, sir, shouldn't you be on the inside lane? And he said, no, I've been doing this for years. So I go around again and come back, and this time I see that there's a sign that says runners on the outside lane and walkers on the inside lane. So I point out the sign to him, and he says, no, that's okay, I've been doing this for years. By the time I finish, I'm a little bit perturbed, maybe a little bit more than just perturbed, and I go find management and bring up management to talk to this individual to let him know that he should be on the inside lane. Well, he's gone, and so he never got that addressed. The next time I go, I see him again, and he's a little bit agitated also, because the first thing he says, mind your own business, mind your own business, mind your own business, which was what I was trying to do. My business was to be on the right lane, on the outside lane. So anyway, I'm not feeling really good about this, and then I go home and I have a Jesus conversation. And it's actually, I'm listening and Jesus is talking, and he says, Joseph, are you in a position right now to actually talk to this man about me? And I say, no. And then he says, don't you remember how I gave up my rights in heaven with all the majesty, and I came to earth, became a human being? I said, yes. So then what I did after that, the next time I went to the rec center, I saw this individual, I talked to him and said, sir, I apologize for the way I behaved and acted towards you. There's plenty of room here for both of us to be running, and I apologize, put out my hand. He put out his hand. We shook hands. I said my name was Joseph. He gave me his name, and that conflict ended. So what did I learn from all that? Because I was right. I had management to say I was right, and it was my right to be in that lane. But sometimes being right is not the most important thing. So what I learned is that respecting this individual and getting to know him was more important than being right. And that you all, thank you. You all are in the city council here. You each have a place of honor and a position, and I respect that. I may not agree with each of you every time, but I respect your position. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mike Harrison.
Mike Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way, Farmers Branch. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I object to the appointment of Mike McGinnis to the P&Z Commission based on the fact he's involved in suing members of his HOA regarding fencing, which in my mind does not bode well to be for his effectiveness, temperament, and judgment on P&Z. Furthermore, he used paid individuals to campaign for him during his election. One of those individuals lied and bullied residents. Also during the campaign, he used images of Chief Hale in endorsements. That is illegal. Chief Hale had no part of this, requiring the city manager to step in. This speaks to character and a poor selection for the P&Z Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tommy Hilkema.
Hi, everybody. Tommy Hilkema, 2581 Brandywine Drive. We recently had the Bluegrass Festival. It was awesome, and we ran the rental chairs for the Friends. There was a staff member, Zach Z, who outpaced all of us 60 and above people moving chairs, and just an awesome young man, and I wanted to give him kudos. But Officer Cortez and Officer Hicks also on Friday and Saturday night agreed to escort us to our car because we had the funds, and just as lovely as can be. So kudos to them. They need to be recognized. Yes, we have an issue with code enforcement, and at the last study, not this study session, but one before, we were talking about garbage cans. I could care less about a 45-gallon garbage can when I have two neighbors who have construction trailers with construction debris parked in their driveway and their trucks blocking the sidewalk. Now the citizens cannot walk. So I am thankful they're not on the streets. The problem is now they're blocking the sidewalk. So I did complain to code enforcement, sent a picture, but when they went out, those trucks were already dispersed to work. So I have a suggestion. Why don't we have a code enforcement with staggered hours? One that goes in the early mornings, one a little later, because it is when the workers come home that the streets are more crowded. So that's just my little suggestion. Thank you for all that you do. It is a hard job. And I beg citizens to model what we're asking you to model, to be respectful and courteous, even when we're upset, because we're passionate about where we live, and we want this to be the greatest city. So to all of my citizens, use your voice, but use it respectfully. Thank you.
Next is Johannes Hilkema.
We ought to have a prayer meeting, because for some of us in here, we have lost our religion. We really have.
Into the microphone, please, Mr.
I
Hilkema.
was talking to them. Johannes Hilkema, 2581 Brandywine Drive. There's so much to say. After all this, I need to go home and have a drink. I mean, really. I mean, we are bickering and yelling at each other and calling each other names and accusing each other. And, you know, I was going to start off with this. I don't understand why at the last council meeting, we had an orchestrated, well-orchestrated hit on Tracy Williams. Watch that. You know, it's amazing when you watch a meeting more than once, like we get to do, and then you see what's going on. Someone comes up here, makes a statement, and says to you, and I know that Tracy no longer lives there, and I've given that information to people. Why wasn't that information in the hands of everybody here? And then it was embarrassing to have to stop the meeting. I mean, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed because it was wrong, it was wrong, it was wrong, it was wrong. It's poison. Whatever's going on in the city is poison. Yeah, I don't know what you want to call it, but we all need to get together. Wherever we go to church, we need to pray for each other. We need to help each other. And I was reading this earlier today, because I like history, of a man by the name of Cincinnatus. Have you ever heard of him? A Roman statesman whose history and legacy says, the citizen leader, that's you guys, should be respected and honored for what you do. Not bullied and ridiculed. And by the way, James Madison, and I know we all like, anyone here not like James, third president of the United States, signature on the Constitution. And he says here, and this struck me, and I'm going to need a couple more minutes. This liberty, the liberty of this country, let me just change a word here. The liberty of this city and its great interest will never, never be secure if its public men and women become mere menials to do the biddings of their constituents, instead of being representatives in the true sense of the word, looking to the lasting prosperity and future interests of the whole city. You're not here to represent just a few people. And I want you to keep that in mind. That's your job, to take care of this city. And you know, there's 44,000 people out there who aren't in here to tell you how much they like you. Thank you.
Last up, former Mayor John Dodd.
Mayor, council, city manager, and council. And Farmers Branch. What I have to say here is thank you, is in regards to Bob Phelps, my friend, my brother in action. I'm the one that encouraged him to run for council and for mayor. His character, his ability to communicate, listen, and resolve an issue. Let me give you an issue that we had. Now, Bob is a good religious person, a good Baptist, and I was a good Lutheran that believed in drink. Now, Bob didn't believe in alcohol, grape juice for communion. I did. We brought, the restaurants wanted alcohol to be served. Now, what do? There's two views. What do I do as mayor? I appoint Bob that head up the committee on alcohol. And that's exactly what everybody did. What? And we resolved in a restaurant, there are those who like to have wine with their dinner, and there are those that don't. But those that don't want to have to sit at the bar before they get seated. Those that don't mind sitting there. So you know what Bob did? We talked. And we came to an ordinance that if you go to a restaurant in Farmers Branch and you don't believe in alcohol, you have to have a place that you can sit and not have to go to the bar. You called the election. We're the only city that went forward without hate, but difference in opinion, and respected each other's opinion, and came to a good resolution. That was Bob. As mayor, as a councilman, he listened, he respected difference in views. We had one of the biggest scandals that's ever hit this city. But Bob did not attack, but with moral conscience, we resolved this to the benefit of the citizens who we all serve. So tonight, I would like all of us to remember that the legacy that Mayor Bob Phelps left us was an example to serve with respect, dignity, resolution, and respect various opinions, because there's always a third opinion that everybody can come to on compromise. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me speak.
You have further redistricting item? That's in a short minute. That's it for citizen comments. Next is our consent agenda. We are moving H9 to a regular agenda item. So with that, I will look for action on items H1 through H8.
Mayor, I make a motion that we put items H1
Second.
Approved at consent agenda.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Merritt, a second by Councilmember Roman. Is there any more discussion? I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. Next are our regular agenda items. J1 is receive a biannual update on Planning and Zoning Commission's work program for fiscal year 2021 and 22. Mrs. Sen.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, John, Mr. Smith. What happens?
Don't mention my name.
Yeah, I learned it. So tonight, I just wanted to introduce Chair Amber Rayleigh to City Council. This is the first time she is speaking in front of City Council. She was appointed or elected as chair to the board in June when our former chair, David Moore, left Planning and Zoning Commission. Amber has been a great asset to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Her leadership skills, as well as her background and passion in planning. She's also a kind of plug-in. She's a doctoral candidate for urban planning and public policy from the same school I graduated. So she's going to join the alma mater very soon. She is a huge asset and support for everything we do in the planning department. And I couldn't be more proud to introduce her and welcome her in front of you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that kind welcome. I come here today really with thanks for all that you do, and especially for staff and all that they do to assist us to make a wonderful city that I'm proud to call home. Firstly, I wanted to bring forth just a update on what we've done in fiscal year 2021-2022. We've had a number of applications that have been acted upon and reviewed. You'll see a list upcoming in future slides. We've had a number of special projects. Our commission was excited to go on a retreat, and some members of council joined us on that retreat. Thank you. To look at planning in other local municipalities. We had a number of awards and recognition, and we have upcoming projects that I'll be delighted to tell you about. Firstly, those cases that I mentioned, you will see, not surprisingly, a dip in cases during the pandemic. That's to be expected. However, we are seeing signs of increased development activity in 2022. So although we had that 32% decrease, we're certainly trending upwards upcoming, and I know we've already heard a number of exciting applications that will make improvements to our city. A couple of accomplishments. Firstly, looking at the IH-35 East Corridor Vision Study, which we adopted in February 2021. You'll see some photographs later. We did win a gold award for that at the American Planning Association, and that's a huge honor in terms of what that plan signifies and can do for our city. We also have here the comprehensive zoning ordinance. That's an amendment for a banquet hall event center that occurred in March 2021. Following in September, expansion of off-premise beer and wine sales and on-premise alcohol consumption overlay districts to the Peninsula Tract over on the west side. In November 2021, we enacted a multifamily development policy, and I believe we've already got some favorable response from that policy in terms of the predictability that developers can come to expect from our policies in Farmers Branch that smooths that development process. The TIF, tax incremental financing, we've got that passed November 2021, which is the first start of the implementation of the IH-35 East Corridor study, which of course is our on the list of our CBOs, so an important initiative there. We heard a presentation, many of you were in attendance at that joint meeting from a New Urbanism Executive Director for the Center for New Urbanism, Rick Cole, in January 2022. And in March of 2022, we allowed murals within the city. I know that that also supports CBO 5 for our arts and culture in Farmers Branch. Thank you. I should note, just an aside, I see John Land has something to say about that, but I did want to note that I do also teach at UT Arlington in addition to getting my PhD, and I do have a number of students who have been assigned to watch this presentation, and they concur.
And I was going to say, I lean on Jeff Brady when I get that reaction. He may still be here if you haven't finished your presentation.
Thank you. February 17th, we took a field trip to Richardson. It was cold, y'all. It was cold, if y'all remember last February. Nonetheless, we saw a number of wonderful developments happening in Richardson. If you take a look at these images of Richardson and you see the 75 and then you see what they've done in terms of the development along 75, it really mirrors our I-35 situation, so it was a useful case study in that we looked at. Also the UT Dallas Richardson campus, Lockwood District, downtown area, and then that city line development happening there adjacent to the transit. March 3rd, 2022, we took a much warmer trip to Fort Worth, where it was City of Commerce weather there, Chamber of Commerce weather. And there we really saw some really nice work in arts and culture, the Near South Side District also really taking advantage of a TIF. To the benefit of the citizens and the businesses there. Magnolia, Highline, and South Main Street were also highlights of that trip. So here you'll see a few images. First, the chilly cold images from Richardson. So a little fewer pictures and we're all bundled up there. And then in Fort Worth, a little sunnier view. Really great work that they did with some small pocket parks you can see there, and really taking advantage. The lower right hand I want to direct you to, this was like a narrow strip near a really nice high quality multifamily development like we see here in Farmers Branch, and just a narrow strip that they weren't quite sure what to do with, worked hand in hand with a developer to create a really nice public space. So. All ideas that we hope to see. I promised you photos. Here they are. That's the gold award that was earned in 2021. And here is the plan, should anyone like to read that. I'm sure you've looked through it extensively, but I did bring it along. I also brought along our nice little pamphlet here from our Silver Award in 2021 for resiliency in terms of our Parklet program, which I have to say is already paid dividends in terms of businesses and what we've been able to do in Farmers Branch. So thank you for your guidance and how to utilize those funds to really help our businesses maintain during a challenging time. Promise you we get into more of those critical business outcomes. Of course, our comprehensive plan is upcoming. I think many of you were in attendance, and hopefully many of you in the audience were also in attendance as we launched in phase 1 of our engagement. We have Stantec as our consultant, and just coming back from the APA Texas conference that was held in El Paso, I will say they're highly regarded in the field of planning and won a number of awards on their own, and really, I think, have gotten off to a great start in terms of engagement in this plan. The full process is 15 to 18 months. We do have those various engagement time periods, and I really look forward to seeing this plan come to fruition. It is long overdue, so thank you again for supporting this important work. I know I'm biased as an academic and a planner, but there is so much that these plans can do to help our city, even funding and grants that we would only be eligible for if we have a comprehensive plan in place. So thank you for your attention to that important work. Here are some images. I really enjoyed myself on August 4th. I was there. Over 120 people in attendance, and kicking it off on the west side I thought was a really nice way to go. And again, supporting yet another critical business outcome, number 9, improving our overall targeted and community engagement, I think in full force at this event. And I think the outcomes that we've seen from this already in terms of how all the various residents of Farmers Branch have responded about their key priorities. I hope that we see those reflected as we go forward. Identifying a couple of other of those critical business outcomes. Number 3, identify and implement a solution for managing drainage and retention. And number 7, execute sustainability initiatives. In order to meet those, staff as well as the commission are looking to meet those strategic plan initiatives through a work plan for landscape regulations and tree preservation requirements. There's a lot of work behind the scenes already happening, and I suspect we'll see these soon at the commission. I know a lot of thought has gone into it, and we have some very expert commissioners as well who will certainly weigh in to shepherd this plan. So I'm looking forward to that. And I want to thank you for your time and attention, as well as to the audience. And please get involved in the comprehensive plan if you're not already, so that you can help shepherd the city for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Thank you.
Ms. Raley, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. I know you've been on the commission a short time, but it seems that everyone on that commission trusts you, your acumen, and what you bring to the leadership table. And, you know, given the body of work of that commission over the last several years, it's just very impressive to see what you all have been able to accomplish, what that means for our community, and the vision that you've helped set us or guide us on. And I just want to say thank you for that, and, you know, look forward to more exciting things to come, especially as we come through this comprehensive plan. Thank you. Next up is J2, discuss and receive a presentation from staff regarding upcoming public engagement push number 2 activities related to the citywide comprehensive plan update. Mrs. Sen.
Thank you, Mayor. That is a really good segue to the next topic on agenda. Thank you, Stacy, for helping us put the items next to each other. As Amber mentioned, we are, of course, as you are aware, we have initiated the citywide comprehensive plan update, and tonight the goal is to inform you and let you know how we are preparing towards the second public engagement push. So overall, it's a broad schedule of 15 to 18 month long process. 3 distinct public engagement phases. The first one happened in August. In your packet, you would have seen the summary report of that phase 1 engagement activity included the full summary report that not only shows you what the citizens talked about in the workshop or how they responded online. There were several avenues, almost all the council members as well as our commissioners, board members, residents in this room attended our workshop on August 4th, and similar exercises were also available online during that same time period, as well as actually much longer. There were exercises like, what is your 6-word story for the future of Farmers Branch? There were 3 boards where it said, like, in Farmers Branch I love, I want more of, I want less of. So there were bucket exercises, checking implementation trade-offs, that if you had a fixed amount of funds, asking people to realistically make decisions on how you would prioritize your needs or your necessities over the next 20 years or more. So with those exercises, both in person as well as online, we received valuable input from the residents. We not only had in-person attendance of 120 plus people, also there were similar, if not more, respondents online. So that summary document that I mentioned, which is part of your agenda packet, is also posted online for anyone to take a look at on how people responded and how which items were their priority needs or desires, or how they viewed Farmers Branch in the 20 years to come. With this second phase, how we are preparing our planning with the consultants, and my apologies, I wanted to introduce Erin. She has joined us. She's the project manager with the Stantec team, and she's joining us via Zoom virtually. So the phase 2 engagement, we are structuring it similar way. There will be topical focus group discussions. There will be some workshops or bike shops. It's in a way walking workshops. So there will be 4 areas within the city, one in East Side, one along Belline Corridor, one on Valwood residential neighborhood and one around the Four Corners area, where the consultant team, members of staff, we will open it to all the residents, as well as we'll also invite the area businesses and residents throughout this month, upcoming month, to join us for these workshops, where we'll walk with them on a given, like we are still designing and fine-tuning the route, but we'll walk on a kind of a mile, half-mile area along the public streetscape and see how the private property and the public space interact, what are the design aspects or what are the usability aspects that pops out when you walk these neighborhoods, when you walk these commercial areas, what kind of improvements can be made or what is lacking or what can be enhanced upon. So that's the goal of those workshops. Similar to the phase 1, we will have a big community workshop on Wednesday, December 7th, and that would be at the central area of the city at the Farmers Branch Recreation Center. In the evening and come and go fashion, similar way we did in phase 1. If you recall, initially when we started this process, we made a commitment that given the diverse nature of our city, the geography, and the way the land uses are spread out, we will make concerted effort to spread the public engagement in 3 geographic areas. So we started on the west side, now we are focusing kind of on the central, and then towards the implementation phase, we'll try to do the phase 3 engagement towards the east side. Again, as you can see on your screen, the 2-day-long engagement activities during these phases will be Tuesday, December 6th, and then Wednesday, December 7th. We wanted City Council to hear first from us about this activity, and then starting from the beginning of November, throughout the month of November, we will do as much marketing as we can, as much outreach as we can, spreading the news about this event so that as many residents as are available can attend these workshops or join us on these workshops. We have coordinated with our communications director and his team, Jeff, I don't see Jeff, on how we can spread the news. We'll do flyer drops. We will send it through utility bill inserts, and there are targeted outreach also via our postal services, where for these workshops we can send those postcards on those addresses where the workshops are going to happen. So besides opening up citywide, we'll try to reach as many people as we can. Of course, our regular method of communication, the comprehensive plan website, which is farmersbranch.gov/cityvision. It's up and running, and we will constantly update that webpage with more information. The flyers and the events will keep on doing periodic updates. There will be social media posts on our city, Farmers Branch City web pages on Facebook and Twitter. Rachel Johnson will help us on those posts. How can you participate? Of course, please plan on joining us on this, one of this or all of these events in December, either at the workshop or the workshops. Be a community ambassador. We're also planning to start that process with formally holding a virtual orientation. We haven't decided on the date yet, but there are several ways you can take part in this process. We are also scheduling the second stakeholder advisory committee meeting next Wednesday. The invitation went out this Monday. So we will be preparing packets. Similar information will be discussed with the committee. And during this 2-day workshop or 2-day engagement activity, we'll also have a technical advisory committee meeting, which is mostly internal with staff. So that was the overall outcome of tonight's discussion. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer. And Erin is present here on Zoom if you have any question for her. I know there is a lot of information in your packet, but if you have any question, we'll be happy to go through them. Thank you.
Sarupa, thank you. Sarupa, thank you very much for your presentation. What excites me most is you guys have definitely taken to task the challenge that we gave you in terms of community engagement and finding different ways to engage our community on this process. And nothing's more evident than meeting number 2, where we get to go out, be in the community, and really take a look at that together. And so just want to say thank you for those efforts. Do any of the council members, Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sarupa. This is pretty exciting to watch this unfold. I just have a question for you. There are walk shops. There are 3 of them listed on December the 6th, one at noon, on the east side, one at 4 on the Beltline corridor, and then 5:30 PM that evening at Valwood neighborhood. It says that these are mile-long walk shops. So we're going to be walking actually a mile in each of those walk shops, and so we're going to be doing 3 miles that day. I'm going to get my steps in.
We'll get some steps that day.
Okay. So for those that may not be great at walking, or maybe a little bit, will be skateboards or something for them to use to get around? Or is there accommodations for someone that wants to be a part of this but can't do a mile-long walk is what I'm getting?
Actually, that's why we are also trying to change the timings. Like, for example, the ones that you see around noon, we'll try to club them around lunch. So either before the workshop or after the workshop, we'll do a lunch kind of where people can sit down, relax. And not necessarily everyone will be joining us everyone is welcome, but we can also plan on having, that's why it's called either bike shop or walk shop. If someone really wants to participate on all 4 or the 3 on that same day, I'm sure we can accommodate alternate means if they want to join us on bike. Or Erin, any thoughts on how we can encourage?
Sure. Well, in general, the way we have the walk shops set up is that they're meant to be focused in a particular area, and that's why the mailings are going to go out to residents and business owners kind of in that area. So generally, even though people are welcome to attend more than one, we would usually only expect them to attend the one that is in their neighborhood or that is near the place that they work that they're particularly interested in. But yeah, a couple of them have lunch spots afterwards where we can meet with people and talk if they don't want to walk the whole mile. And we will be in town for 2 days and have multiple opportunities to meet people where they are, even if they don't want to walk in those areas.
And another, if I may also add on that, is the discussions that we will have in these workshops. We are also planning to mimic most of those discussions through various stations in the workshop also, which is the community workshop. So say if I miss, say for example, the Beltline corridor walk. However, if I'm able to attend the community workshop on 7th, there will be similar discussion on land use and the things that Stantec and their team or our team will discuss on the Beltline corridor at the workshop. So the resident wouldn't necessarily miss one by not attending one or the other. However, yes, we are trying to have 3 workshops on the same day, so.
Yeah, that's not, I'm just thinking that for someone that may not be able to walk a mile that wants to participate, if there's some kind of an accommodation that we can make for those residents, I'd like for us to think through that. That's all.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
We'll take that into account and see if we
I
can
know when we
provide.
did the East Side plan, we had a shuttle. Because I remember I was running late for the meeting and I was able to find out where the shuttle was and hopped on. So there was kind of that accommodation. We might look at doing something like that so everybody can participate.
Councilmember Merritt.
Sir Rupa, you know I'm very excited about this particular project and have been since its initiation. I look forward to what you have planned, and Ms. Perdue, thank you for all that you're putting forward in the planning, similar to Mayor Dye. The communication is far better than we anticipated. It's penetrating deeply and people are interested in this. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm looking forward to that heavy lift when it does arrive. But wanted to thank you for all that you have done to this point. Look forward to these opportunities for walk shops and the community workshop on the 6th and the 7th. So thank you.
Anyone else, any comments? All right. Ms. Sen, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Next is J3, receive recommendation from the Redistricting Commission regarding review of proposed redistricting maps 7, 8, and 9 and consider adopting ordinance number 3767, establishing city council districts in accordance with section 7.10 of the city charter, and take appropriate action. Mr. Blackson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Redistricting Commission reconvened at the request of the City Council on September 14th to review new maps 8 and 9 with regards to the Commission's original recommendation of map 7. After careful consideration of new maps 8 and 9, the Redistricting Commission unanimously voted to keep the recommendation unchanged from our recommendation of map 7 as presented on June 7th, 2022. I have my super friends here, Bob Heath and Sherry McCall, that can answer any questions that you may have, or if we want to open the map software, we've got it loaded, locked and loaded right here, ready to go.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Councilmember Blackson or Mr. Heath at this time, or if you do?
Mayor, I'd like some comments, but I'll wait until we hear the further discussion. I don't know if there's a presentation.
No, if there's any questions, we're here to answer any questions that you may have with regards to the recommendation that we had on June 7th, or if you've got anything else that you'd like to see that we've not addressed so far.
Okay, thank you. I know that there was, so I watched the meeting, and it seems like there was a new metric called SSRV that was introduced. It was new to us when we were sitting down discussing this, and from the discussion, it was new to you guys as well for the committee. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. How did that metric play into your decision to affirm your recommendation for map 7?
Well, first, SSRV stands for Spanish Surname Registered Voters. And when you're looking at redistricting, we look at basically 4 metrics. First, we look at total population and voting age population, and those are the ones we typically look at in the drawing process because we've got to get districts to be in population balance. And the other metrics generally follow those. SSRV is one that gives you a good idea of the voting strength with the Hispanic minority group. And so if you have a Hispanic predominant district, that's something you're going to look at. We typically do that late in the process simply for the ways you compute those and so forth. You don't do them so much on the fly as you do the others. But so it's one thing, and it's a very good measure of Hispanic voting strength. We also look at Hispanic voting age population, which is another metric of that.
Okay. So it sounds, would it be fair to say that the metric SSRV is instrumental in deciding what map we should select?
Yes, that's one, and that's one that if we were in federal court, the court would certainly look at that.
I appreciate that. Given the importance of SSRV, I'm curious to why it wasn't a metric that the committee was allowed to use from the inception of the committee.
Well, like I say, typically if you have high Hispanic voting age population, you're going to have a fairly high Spanish surname registered voters. And like I say, typically we look at those at the end, but the other thing is that with the district that was most liable to result in potential litigation, because that's where you're looking at SSRV, was District 1, and the district that ended up being drawn by the commission was one that very much mirrored what the federal court had approved in 2013 as the district that the city was required to adopt. So we sort of knew that the SSRV was there.
Okay. So I've taken a hard look at the different maps and talked to individuals in the districts, and so I've kind of wanted to walk you through my thought process.
Sure.
But first, let me just share a story. When I first started looking at these maps, one thing became very abundantly clear to me. Should map 7 be the map that we move forward with, that will include my neighborhood, the little Kensington neighborhood that I live in, with all the neighbors that I've come to know very well and have been very supportive of my endeavors here in City Council, as well as the historical part of Farmers Branch that's mostly Hispanic. It seems like that Hispanic population will increase. And so when I looked at the data, when I won my election, I won the Hispanic votes by 79-ish%, somewhere around that. And so if I'm just following the numbers, it would be really beneficial for me to move forward with map 7 if I was just thinking of re-election. We don't even know if I'm going to run for re-election just right off the bat, but that was what I thought. But what I ran on and what I focus on sitting up here making decisions is making sure that I put my needs and my biases to the side and consider the opinions of those that I represent. And those people that I represent in the Mercer Crossing area have expressed concern with being divided. And I went back and I looked at our charter, and on here it says that to the extent practicable, communities of interest shall be placed in a single district, and attempts should be made to avoid splitting neighborhoods where possible without violating the other requirements and applicable laws. And so it seems like looking at our city charter and keeping in mind that our city charter is reviewed frequently by residents and city council, it seems like the intent of that piece of legislation was to ensure that communities of interest like Mercer Crossing, those who have common issues, aren't split up. So that's part of what I'm struggling with. And I remember when the committee was put back together to reconvene and reconsider map 7, 8, and 9, I had a committee member reach out to me and said, you know, we don't really understand what we're supposed to be doing. We're confused. I thought we were going to make the recommendation, and then council from there was going to make whatever decision they were going to make. After reviewing the video carefully, it seems like it was a very brief process when they revisited map 7, and it was more of a, and I'm over simplifying it, but it was essentially, everybody good with map 7? And it was like, okay, yeah, we're good. I don't really understand where map 8 or 9 came from, whereas we as council members intimately know our district, our council, or our communities of interest. We have our ears to the ground listening to what people are saying, whereas the committee members may not have been privy to that information. So, and I've heard many times that sometimes there is power in numbers, and having 2 representatives in the Mercer Crossing area may bode beneficial. But it's only beneficial if those 2 council members agree on every issue and agree on the resolution to every single one of those issues. And we as humans aren't going to always agree 100% of the time on every single item. And so there are other communities like the Brookhaven community that currently has 2 representatives and have not really heard any positive implications from having that community divided. I think we have 2 other maps 8 and 9, one created by our committee chair, and one that we kind of was spearheaded by a council member, and we all kind of had our ability to provide input there. And it seems like those maps take into consideration the issues that I'm hearing from my residents, at least in particular. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that I presented kind of what I was thinking, and if there was a differing opinion or maybe a lapse in the way I was looking at things, I was kind of looking for some guidance or explanation from the committee.
I'll speak first. So in
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry about that. In looking at maps 8 and 9, you know, and going back, I made sure that each member, I watched it again today, I think I had 3 opportunities to make any change they wanted to any map. We could start a new map. And, okay. So whenever I went back and we addressed all these issues, and we talked about this during our meeting, I made sure that all the members of the committee had their opportunity to speak and bring forth a new map or start over or change any. We weren't in a rush. We weren't capped at 1 meeting. We weren't capped at 3 hours. We were capped at doing this right. And that's why we came back, is because we're here to do this right. And that's why we're all sitting here, is we want to do this right. And this is our opportunity to do this right. So it wasn't that we rushed anything or the committee had any plan to just say 7 was right or 8 was right or 9 was right. That was the map that we had put together and they were most intimately familiar with. But at the same time, they saw that the council had brought these other 2 maps to them. And so we delve into them, and we were there for, I don't know, almost 3 hours that night, and we looked through all the maps, and at the end of it, when it all shook out, the recommendation didn't change. I don't vote, but the committee unanimously that night agreed on not to change the recommendation. And they had ample opportunities that night. You know, the streets, they all had names, and we all looked at it all. We made sure that everyone had the opportunity. And so I just want to make sure that it wasn't that we rushed it or you felt like we were trying to manipulate it or anything of the sort. I made sure that everyone had the opportunity to speak. And when I went around the room, I roll called twice. You know, I made sure I said everyone's name. I said, what would you like to see? What would you like to change? And this is where we ended up tonight. So, Bob, you can address any of the other issues.
I just had one follow-up question. Sure. Since the deliberation for the recommendation to support map 7 from that date to now, have any committee members reached out expressing concern or?
One committee member has spoken or has raised their hand and said that they disagree now with the direction that we've gone with map 7. So they, in the messages that I received or emails, and also had an hour-long conversation yesterday, that they felt like their recommendation was to go back and look at 7, 8, 9 from the ground up and almost start back over with the process.
You just said something that kind of sparked my interest. You mentioned that the committee member who you spoke to said that she'd like to go back and start from the bottom up.
Well, in her email, there were 3 things, and the bottom was recommendation. And her recommendation was that we go back and start with 7, 8, 9 and figure out which one's going to be right, or if map 10 becomes the right one, based on the deliberations of 7, 8, and 9.
But it sounds like you just said that there was significant deliberation already. Did she indicate or he indicate why they didn't feel like there was enough opportunity for them to do what they're now asking for?
During the meeting, they were unanimous, and there weren't any issues, and they contributed to the meeting unanimously. I can't speak for them as to what's changed or what's made them change, but they are definitely their opinion has not changed.
Yeah. Have any other committee members reached out and expressed any concern, whether in support or in not support of the recommendation?
No, sir.
Okay. And I think, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, I think the commission chair amply explained it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have specifically for me.
I may have more questions, but I'll just defer to for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Heath, just a real quick cleanup item. We need your address.
Oh, my name is Bob Heath, and I reside in Austin, Texas, 7512 Stonecliff Circle.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments at this time? Councilmember Jackson.
Mayor, I have some questions, also have some comments. I would like to wait until we hear from citizens. We're going to have a public hearing, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. Thank you.
Anyone else? Everyone's going to, all right. We're going to move to citizen comments portion, and then we'll jump back into some discussion. First up, Brenda Broderick.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Brenda Broderick. I live at 13531 Rawhide here in Farmers Branch. I think what we see here going on tonight is the populist movement is rising up. And it's encouraging to me because government is of, for, and by the people. And the people are wanting to express our voices, and it starts at the local level. So I'm really, really encouraged. There has been some frustration, but, you know, we've been silenced. And so now we have our voices back, and it's very encouraging for me to see this. All right, what I'm here today to speak about is I'm favoring map number 9 because I heard the gentleman say about population balance. I believe that the numbers are most evenly divided amongst the 5 districts in map 9. I believe it balances the homes and apartments more evenly. And it seems to me that it's divided by the rivers and streets. And so it's a cleaner cut map where you have streets that are straight and rivers that divide areas naturally. So it's not crisscross. It best fulfills the metrics. It separates districts 1 and 3 at LBJ Express, which seems appropriate. District 2 has Valley View for a southern border, and so we're not going into taking Primrose, and the one next to Primrose that also starts with a P, Phyllis. And we're not, I think that area, that Austell area, needs to be intact. Primrose and Phyllis needs to stay with Levita and Randy and Eric. According to the metrics, you're wanting to keep neighborhoods together. That's a really important little neighborhood in there. And they're pretty tight-knit. And that area ought to stay together and not be separated. As one person said, it's a miracle map. So I'll leave with that. Thank you so much for considering map number 9.
Next is Pat Edmonston.
Pat Edmonston, Tanglewood Drive, Farmers Branch. I would like to go along with Brenda and suggest that you consider map 9, or my first recommendation would be to start over with those 3 maps and maybe more inform the residents. I don't think that a lot of people really realize how important this situation is to our community and how long it's going to last. It's going to be for 10 years. And of course, nobody has a crystal ball to say where the next big development is going to be or how that's going to change, but we'll just have to live with that. But I understand that a council person came up with a recommendation for minor changes to map 9, and if nothing else happens, I would like to see that given serious consideration. Thank you.
Next is Rick Johnson. Oh.
Rick Johnson, Harley Drive. What I heard tonight from the gentleman who helped with this process from Austin, one of the things is it sounds like we've created a lot of this so we don't have the ability to get sued, which virtually is creating a second Hispanic district. The Hispanic population is the majority in Farmers Branch now, and so we don't run into issues like with Miss Williams and other people and stuff. Why haven't they approached the court again and say, hey, look, our dynamics have changed. Why should we have districts? Why can't we go back to open elections for seats like we used to? The other issue is if one of the matrix is not getting sued and it has to do with the Latino community or Hispanic community, don't you think everybody should have known that from the start? It shouldn't come in as, well, kind of one of the last things we do. It should be one of the first things we do, right? But then again, how likely are we to be sued for the fact of that we're creating a district that is the wealthiest people in the city? And then that in turn creates one that represents the poorest people in the city instead of dividing it up so it's equal. Why is it that we might be, with map 7, creating a district in 20% of our city that could have 2 representatives for it? That doesn't solve anything. That's not good. You've got a district that's designed basically that has the majority of apartments. That's transient living. They don't have a vested interest in long-term for the city. You know, there's a lot of misrepresentation to get to where we're supposed to not be sued, but yet it's opening up far more opportunities to get sued. It looks a lot like gerrymandering, you know, and there's going to be people that are going to bring that up. And they're going to go down to Austin and they're going to do their thing. So, you know, the process, I feel, has been flawed. And absolutely we should relook at it. And there's nothing wrong with relooking at it. You know, at some point, you're not going to please everybody, but at the other point, you know, you got to do what's right. And the way that you're switching people around and stuff is no continuity with map 7. Thank you.
Next is Christine Diamond. Christine Diamond. I don't see her. We'll come back to it at the end. Vicki Harrison.
Vicki Harrison, 3706 Ojoko Way. During the meeting on August 25th, rather mysteriously, in the midst of preparing to vote, the mayor paused the process. You went into session, everyone waited, and then, Mayor, you returned and assured your constituents that night that there would be abundant opportunity to review the new findings and that would be prior to a vote. Well, you have a vote scheduled tonight. This is not giving the constituents time to discuss what transpired or much of an explanation of that. So also what has been revealed is that they didn't do a bottom-up review of the 3 proposed maps. So that would be necessary to really evaluate whether one was more acceptable than the other. But map 7 is unacceptable because it doesn't comply with the Farmers Branch Charter rule. Communities of interest should be maintained in a single district and attempts should be made to avoid splitting neighborhoods. It disrupts districts 1 and 3 and divides the Mercer Crossing neighborhood of just elected Omar Roman. If there is a duly elected city council member in a district, they are not to be disrupted with a new map. And it also lacks any multifamily composition, which is necessary for fair distribution in all of the districts. It was created also by the admission of the committee planning for future growth. The criteria strictly forbid that. Future growth cannot be used as a metric. That's the law. Look it up. It would, if you, and furthermore, the committee has no expertise in population planning, so what they would say about future populations could not be accepted as fact. Now, maps 8 and 9 meet the criteria of the charter. They don't disrupt communities of interest, and they do not split neighborhoods. Map 8 does divide communities of interest on 5 streets. Map 9 only disrupts on 3 streets, which are shorter streets and not in the Austell neighborhood. Map 9 should be preferable and adopted because it meets the most criteria with minimum disruption, and it complies with the Charter as well as the Voting Rights Act.
Next is Mike Harrison.
Mike Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way, Farmers Branch. Mr. Mayor, City Council, not to reiterate, I think everyone has stolen half of my speech, so I'll skip over most of it. But what I would like to ask is that we postpone the vote on the redistricting maps, have some type of a session where everyone can look at them, review, ask questions, look at the options. To me, I think map 9 is the best. It's the most fair. 8 would be secondary. Map 7, to me, is out of the question. But I would like to ask that we postpone the vote to a later date, have a citizen meeting, town hall, whatever. Let's review all this, get the questions out, and then have a vote after that. Thank you very much.
Next is A.J. Cotton.
Hello, my name is A.J. Cotton. My husband and I live at 3062 Eric Lane. It's on the corner of Eric and Webb Chapel. We live in a district that is split. 7 and 8 split that district. 9 does not. I agree with Brenda on everything she said, and I think we need to postpone a vote and relook at these maps. Plan 7 is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time for Christy Diamond. Okay. That is the end of citizen comments. So with that, Mr. Jackson, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say one more time to the commission, I know you guys put a lot of time into this, and I really do appreciate the work, right? We'd be starting from the ground up here without your work, so thank you again for all that. I do have some questions for you. The very first meeting was January the 19th. Right? That was a time, in fact, the first several meetings were held prior to knowing who all was going to run in districts 1 and 4 city council seats. And so in the early part of y'all's efforts, let's say, I would suggest that perhaps you might have been flying a little bit blind because some of that work would have needed to change based on whoever was a candidate for council and where they might live. That might change some of your work. And I know y'all acknowledge some of that. However, did you bring maps prepared to the first meetings?
No.
You did not?
We had provided maps we had like 2 recommendation maps.
Okay.
So that would be
Yeah,
map A and
We
B.
would have, and I'd have to go back and look to refresh my memory.
More into the
but
microphone,
it's
please, Mr. Heath.
Typical, yeah, I'm sorry. We would go back to refresh my memory, but typically what we will do just to get things rolling is to draw a map or 2 that complies with the law and brings districts into balance. And with the idea that those are ones that are going to be changed because, but it's just easier to get something into balance and then start working from that. So,
And so to answer your question, that night before was maybe my first time ever mapping. And I may have printed some maps, but they shot those down so quick. Those are the maps that they used the pen and they drew over. I broke them into breakout sessions and I put 1 representative from each district into 3 separate groups. And I gave them a blank map that showed the overlays, it showed where they were. And I said, let's draw, here we go, we're drawing. And so that was that very first meeting that we had, but there was no map that we had, any map that I brought, every single time they tore it apart and made something else of it. So what we see is maps 7, 8, and 9. Map 8 is the map I brought to the council meeting, but maps 1 through A, B, and then 1 through 7 or from the committee. They didn't come from myself.
So in agreeing with a comment that a resident made earlier, when you go back and watch some of these videos, they're quite telling. And what I saw in some of the early videos was there were a couple of maps that were brought to the first meetings. In fact, what were the 2 maps that you presented to council as the initial recommendation? What number maps were those?
4 and 7, wasn't it?
4
and 7, correct. So there were 2 maps that were brought to the earliest session that ended up being maps number 2 and 4. Most of the maps, 1 through 7, were based on a design that splits Mercer Crossing in half. The 2 maps that Mr. Heath's consulting firm brought as a starting point were not initially shown. We've seen that in the video, and Mr. Heath, you and I had a brief conversation in one meeting where those 2 maps were not maps that were used by the commission to work on. I've got them right here, and one of them doesn't look anything like maps 1 through 7, and the other one looks a whole lot like maps 8 and 9. So if the commission did such a thorough job of reviewing all the options, then how come the map that the consultants brought as a starting point, just a suggested starting point, and it was even said in the videos, let's start with something that's in balance, because it's a lot easier to start with something that's in balance. This was in balance. Its deviation was a little high, but it was in balance. This map never made it into the first 7. Never did. And that concerns me from a process perspective. I've looked at these maps, perhaps more than the commission has looked at them. I've reviewed the videos multiple times. This is a complex process. And there's a lot that you, the public, are not aware of that the commission and the council has to take into consideration. And Mr. Heath stated that a moment ago. Total population, deviations, voting age population, Hispanic voting age population, SSRV, which was a new concept very late in the process. However, turns out, is supposed to be pretty material to the outcome. But it's a very delicate balancing act. And it starts out with, we know that District 3 is 2,000 people too heavy, and Districts 2 and 5 are a little bit more than 1,000 people light. It's not as simple as let's just move this line here and move that line there, and everything is good, we can go home. You move one line in one district, and it's a domino effect with all of the other districts. It's something that perhaps the general public is not aware of. But you just have to trust us and appreciate that characteristic. We need a map at the end of the day that complies with our charter, that's fair and considerate of the minority vote. As someone mentioned a while ago, Farmers Branch is a minority Hispanic community. Map 7 does not check all the boxes. Maps 8 and 9 do. There are material concerns with Map 7. Let me outline that for you. One, the abrupt and substantial and unnecessary division created across Mercer Crossing, as one resident's already pointed out, conflicts wildly with Charter Rule 7.10C5 about keeping communities of interest intact and avoiding splitting neighborhoods. Map 7 also splits Farmers Branch Lane and Eric Lane down the middle of a street, which is unnecessary, right? It's unnecessary to do that. Maps 8 and 9 actually prove that. The Austell neighborhood, I don't live there, but the Austell neighborhood is one of Farmers Branch's most established neighborhoods, and again, they are viewed as a community of interest. They should be kept intact. Conversely, Maps 8 and 9 present solutions to the Map 7 concerns. 8 and 9 restore communities of interest to the Farmers Branch Lane and the Mercer Crossing areas. Map 9, however, takes it a step further by restoring the Austell neighborhood, by moving the divider from Eric Lane, which you have people living across the street from each other that will be in different districts. It moves that line down to the creek, which is more of a natural divider. Makes sense to me, and it actually says that in some of the guidelines of the process. In reviewing the demographics, because this isn't just about how districts look, this is the makeup of the districts with residents, where every residence equals one vote, and then the minority consideration. Map 8's deviation is quite a bit better than 7. That's important. Deviation, you need to keep it under 10%. Map 7 is 4.92. Map 8 is 3.55. That's 137 basis points lower. That's good. Far below the maximum. Map 9's deviation is a little bit higher than Map 7. It's 5.67 as opposed to 4.92, but still well under the 10% maximum deviation. Throughout the commission meetings, the overarching concern was to avoid discriminating against our Hispanic voting community. So let's just talk about that in relation to Map 7, 8, and 9. Map 7 improves District 1's Hispanic population from 67% to almost 80%. Why does it need to increase that much? Because the guideline was we don't want to reduce or dilute the Hispanic vote. We're not seeking to substantially increase the voting strength. And why does it have to come at the cost of splitting important and established communities of interest? That's what Map 7 does here. That's what it does. Map 8 raises the Hispanic population slightly from what it is today, 61.9 to 71, while creating a second minority majority district in District 2. So increasing the Hispanic majority from 48% to 64%. That's Map 8. That's a good thing. Map 9 minority-majority results are quite similar, and that also creates a second minority-majority district. The last key criteria that I want to talk about is the Hispanic voting age population. Maps 8 and 9 maintain District 1's Hispanic voting age population at around 62%. That's about what it is today, and that's what 8 and 9 accomplish. But it materially improves it for District 2 from 43% to 58%. So the fear and the concerns about the lawsuits and making sure that our Hispanic voting community is well represented throughout this process, I believe is represented better in maps 8 and 9. It's strongly positive for our Hispanic voting community and for our Farmers Branch community at large. So we're not just complying with discriminatory concerns, we're more than complying. So from District 4's perspective, my district, I'm indifferent, map 7, 8, and 9. But this isn't about my district, this is about the city. And based on the research that I've done, and I've attended a couple of your meetings, and I've watched all of your meetings over and over again, map 9 is what I firmly believe is right for our city and right for all districts, regardless of your origin, regardless of your income. I believe map 9 best represents Farmers Branch.
Councilmember Merritt.
I want us to respond to Councilman Jackson's comments now, or do you want to wait till?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You want to go first or me?
You can go first, and then I'll come.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to address was our process. So our process was very in-depth, and we had a checklist, and the checklist had 11 items on it that came from our charter and that came from the resolution that council passed that created the script, or it bound us. It gave us our set of rules, our playing for the game we were playing, the game of moving the map around. It gave us our rules. And so each map that we had to score it on the checklist. And every member of the group scored the checklist. And if it didn't make the checklist, then it wasn't a map that was sufficient that could be considered even for a vote amongst the group. So first and foremost, the process, I want to make sure we clarify that we didn't just shoot from the hip, or we didn't just pull these ideas from the sky. It's bound by very, very important documents, the charter and the resolution that stood the commission up, enacted us, and gave us very, very specific things to do.
Understood. Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
Did you use that checklist in the session where the commission reconvened to look at maps 8 and 9?
We did not use the checklist at that point.
And
no.
why, if it was such an important tool, why wasn't that checklist used when we asked you guys to get back together and reconvene?
So the checklist was used to make sure we were getting our maps to where we needed them. It was a point of, once we got that checklist going, we knew we were at that 70% on a map. We knew we were at the level that we were checking all the boxes and we were doing things right, but then it was just fine tuning. It was just moving a little people over here, moving a little people over here, moving a street over here or a street over there. So once maps 4 and map 7 rose to the top, we knew those were, based on our meetings, and we knew that what they were, what the fabric that created those maps were. So it wasn't necessary to use that, because I didn't think you were going to give me a map that I need to go check that, number 1. That was map number 9. Or would I give you a map, number 8, that I need to go check those boxes. So that's why the checklist wasn't used, because we were already past that. We'd already risen to the top, and we'd already made sure that what we were doing was checking all those boxes. All we need to do is just move a couple streets back and forth just to fine tune the areas. And after I met with all of the council members, that's how map 9 was born, or map 8 was born, is I heard some of the issues that you had, and I heard some of the issues that Councilmember Roman had, and that's where map 8 came from. And so the other thing I wanted to bring up was, you asked about why we didn't use the maps that they suggested, because they were a suggestion. first and foremost. And second, I didn't want us to be bound by anything. I wanted them to see a blank map. I wanted them to be able to see that they could pick what could be a dividing line. They could pick a majority, something in the city that was a line that didn't move. And one of those initial lines that were that was Webb Chapel. That was a line that divided the map. And so those were the things that they came, when we did that breakout session and we had the three different groups, that's what came from that, is they got to see something that had no lines on it. And they got to come up with something that, and those were the lines that we have today in all of our maps. And that was one line that we still have, but it was being able to reset to zero and not see anything that was predetermined or anything that would make them believe we had to have a street here, we had to have a line here. It was let them see they could put the line where they wanted. This was their committee. It was their option to start the process. And that's what it was. It was a starting the process, getting everyone familiar with the mapping process, because it was very, very difficult for everyone to understand how moving one line is a effect through the whole entire map. It sends shockwaves to the entire map. And so that was important to let them start from a blank map and let them see that they could make a line that was a defining line or something that they didn't feel needed to be moved. They voted on that. That was what Webb Chapel became, is it became a defining line for the rest of the maps.
And when they started with a new map, they started over, the checklist helped them get 70 or 80% there, as you just mentioned, right?
Correct.
Maps 8 and 9 being quite different than map 7, to me, would seem to call for the need of that checklist to make sure that it meets the 70 and 80% criteria that all of the prior 7 maps had met. When I look at these maps, there's only a couple of maps out of 1 through 7 that are wildly different than the other 5. And those couple of maps actually would be invalid because they pushed candidate out of their district.
Right, and part of that is once we learned who the candidates were and whatnot, we had to get clarification as to what the rule was and that we couldn't not consider someone that was running versus someone that was an incumbent. So we had to get that. Once we got that clarification, we further understood where the lines had to start. We had to include those in the districts that they were already in.
Right.
And so those base maps that you saw that were laminated and they colored on, the only dots that were on those maps were the candidates or were the incumbents.
Mm-hmm.
There was no lines pre-drawn on the map. It was a blank map.
Right.
It just showed our bounding lines. And I don't even believe that we had our current lines on those maps. So I'll defer to Bob for the rest of the.
Okay. You're right about the 3, 7, 8, and 9 are all in population balance in the sense that they are all under the 10% total maximum deviation. 7 is the middle of the 3, 9 has the largest deviation, but any of them are acceptable deviation. In my view, 7 was the one that most clearly complies with the Voting Rights Act. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of detail, but one of the things, and we talk about majority minority districts, you don't look just at, say, oh, is it over 50%? That's something you may look at, but also you have to look at, is it an effective district where the group has the equal opportunity to elect? And that's different for different minority groups because of different age groupings, citizenship groupings, turnout groupings, et cetera. What happened in District 1, which was the district that the federal court essentially came up with or approved as the remedy from the lawsuit back in 2013. Since that time, District 1 grew by 1,600 people. And actually the whole city grew. But part of that growth meant that the number of, or percentage of Hispanic voters decreased from about 43% down to 31%. So one of the redrawing of District 1 brought it back to essentially what the federal court approved when the court ordered the creation of that district.
And so that was getting us from the 31% back up to 43%?
Yeah, actually, it was back up to 42.
42%.
Close.
What happens if we don't have 42% Hispanics that live in that district any longer? Then what's the right number?
Well, the less Hispanic it is, the harder it is to defend. But, I mean, I don't want to get up and, get in a lot of detail,
Sure.
some of which would be more appropriate in executive
Understood.
session.
Right. But map 8 and map 9, well, let me back up. There's some science to this, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
software obviously is quite complicated.
Yes.
Some pretty brilliant minds put it together. It takes some brilliant minds to work with it. Sherry, you're one of them.
And one thing just to mention, talking about neighborhoods, and certainly the commission is the one that is more knowledgeable about neighborhoods. But one of the things that was an issue on drawing these is that we are constrained by the design of the census blocks. And those don't necessarily follow neighborhood lines or lend themselves to the most compact. And so the commission did the best it could and then said, here are ones we think we ought to recommend to the census for the next time, that they split these up so that it makes it easier to draw a more manageable map.
So if we're looking at such the minute detail that 75% Hispanic voting age population is better than 62 in map 8 or map 9, which is about the same what it is today in our current district. We look at the SSRV, again, that is Spanish surname registered voters. What about Maria Gonzalez that married Richard Jackson and now she's Maria Jackson?
Sure.
She doesn't get considered in the SSRV. I'm just wondering, are we going so far down the tracks with this scientifically and we're scaring ourselves to death of lawsuits that we're losing sight of what the
Yeah,
end goal is?
SSRV is not perfect. It is a fairly good measurement. It works pretty well, particularly where the Hispanic population is largely of Mexican origin, which is different than, say, some of the other areas. And those pretty much balance out in that there are going to be some people with Hispanic names that are not Hispanic and vice versa. But, you know, in court and in the Farmers Branch case in particular back in 2013, that's one of the things that got litigated and presented to the court. And I assure you, in representing Farmers Branch, we tried to give the best representation for the city and challenge numbers wherever we could where it was helpful to the case. But ultimately, that's what where the court came out. And that's what most courts do.
Okay, thank you.
Bronson, thank you for the leadership on the commission. I want to thank the commission as well for all the work they did and have done. One of the things we hear a lot is that we need citizen input, and I want to go back to the fact that the council, back in the January timeframe, set forth selecting citizens to represent the city from each of our districts from across the city. So we put it in front of those people, put it with the help of Mr. Heath and his company and the software. I understand that there are a lot of concerns and gnashing of teeth on where lines land in the new maps. But I will remind people, if they'll go back and look at the current map, we have similar situations that exist currently. and I'll pick on two that are in my area. If you go west on Southern Pines, that area is outside of District 5, actually in District 2. Likewise, if you go on Tanglewood on the west side, south of Brookhaven Club, we have streets that divided. And I'll throw a third, Candlewick, which is one street north of Valwood Parkway, is also separated. And those are just three examples. So we could cherry pick any district and find situations. And I think it's exacerbated, Mr. Heath, by what you described with the census blocks. I think it's not so easy to simply say we want our line here or there. Now, are we all going to be happy with the results? The answer is no. But if we look at how redistricting occurs at our state level, we've had adjustments in our state representation down in Austin, both at the House level and at the Senate level across Farmers Branch. So we're impacted by these things as they occur on a periodic basis. One of the things that I've had trouble with is maps 8 and 9 were generated outside of the committee. Bronson, leading the committee, made a best effort to listen to each of us. He visited, came to my home, came to everyone, and visited with everyone else. I appreciated that, that gesture, and I think it came out with a stronger map. Map 9, generated by my peer here on the council, we could have sat back in January and perhaps crafted our own. But I think there would have been more gnashing of teeth amongst the residents and constituents if we had drawn up a map by ourselves without that input. So I want to make sure that we're trying to balance both sides of that desire. It's very, very difficult. And I want to make sure that, you know, we talk about dividing neighborhoods. There's still going to be divided neighborhoods. Johnston Park in District 5 is going to be separated going forward. There are others that we could pick through. It's going to happen. Not everybody is going to get what they want. But what this does say to me as a representative and elected from District 5, now I know many people, and I'll say this humorously, I have it out for me in District 5 because I'm not listening to them, but I'm going to have to go out and make new friends. I'm going to have to go out and represent new individuals and make them aware of myself and listen to their concerns. It's a growing opportunity, and that's fine. And I look forward to that opportunity when we settle on whatever map we settle on. But I'm losing large swaths of District 5 as we used Webb Chapel as a divider line. So much of the western side of my district is going away. And as we talk about those folks that voted for me, I have a number of folks in the area that did vote for me that I know very, very well. So I'm accepting of that. I think if we are looking at the process, I think, Richard, if I may, I think your point of validating maps 8 and 9 against the checklist is probably a fair ask of the committee, and that didn't happen, and I'm surprised at that as well. So I'd like to maybe look at opportunities to have those validated by the commission, but I think it's imperative that the citizens that are on that commission represent the entirety and put forth the best effort, and I know that they have. And we have 2 other maps that came in after the process, and that's not what we set out to do, and I think that's where I have the most consternation here. So, Mayor, that's all I have to say at the moment.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Driscoll, Councilmember Williams.
Hang on one second. Oh. So in talking about the census blocks that have been brought up, if there are about 5 census blocks that if we're changed, this maps look completely different. A lot of these issues go away. A lot of these neighborhoods that are split look completely different. And that's one of the things that everyone struggled with in the beginning was it's a give and take. Everyone came in with kind of their hyper-focused on their neighborhood, their streets, their district, really wanting to maintain that and to fight for that. But after that first meeting, they backed up to that 30,000-foot approach, and they looked at the whole city, and they looked at it at the level that you have to complete this. And so it was everyone gained and everyone lost. And it was, in any map that we do, we'll go back to the drawing boards again. I have no problem with that, and we can come up with another map. And my question is there going to be another segment that's upset that their street gets split? Because right now, my street was split, and I'm in a different district than I was. And not that I voted or had a vote, the idea was that we all lost and we all gained from a community standpoint. And so if we do this again, is there a line that's drawn now that someone's okay with that all of a sudden they're not going to be okay with? And so that's the question that we asked when we were at 4 and we were at 7. And then whenever I met with you all to come to 8, I thought, what was the least, the lesser of the evil? And that's how map 8 was born.
Councilmember Roman.
So just so I'm really clear on this, I'm not saying that it needs to be a perfect map that encompasses every single neighborhood and prevents any division, because I recognize that that is an impossible task to charge you all with. The amount of change happening in my district is what is of utmost importance to me. When you look at the map and look at where we are now and look at map 7, there is a significant change in the Mercer Crossing area. So, I wouldn't be sitting here advocating for map 8 or 9 if map 7 demonstrated a lesser division in my district. And I've gone back and I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, I looked at what the rules or the process was, recognizing that we're wanting to follow the process. And part of that process was allowing residents to bring forth their own maps outside of the committee. And Richard is a resident, and so is Mr. Bronson. And both of them brought forth maps. And so, I think while outside of the committee, we were fully within the confines of the process that council agreed to early this year. So I just want to make sure I was clear on my intent and what it was that I was saying and wasn't misinterpreted. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
Bronson, thank you again, you and the committee, and I really appreciate the fact that y'all were willing to get back together and revisit this. I'm a process person as well, and we set down rules, and they were in the best interest of the city as a whole, to have non-elected officials decide that process. And decide on those maps and make those recommendations. And then for us then to vote as a council together on those recommendations, based on those recommendations. I will tell you, all of the maps, as District 3, I had the most to lose. So, and I knew that was going to happen. And I will tell you, I think we should respect the process. I think we should take the path of what is the most protective for the city from lawsuits, as long as it met the standards, which MAP 7 did multiple times. And I will say this, as far as because we get to where we start feeling a little sentimental about districts, but district lines do not confine nor define a neighborhood. Neighbors do that. So just because I lost all of my residents in the Austell area with any of these 3 maps does not make them any less my neighbors, and it doesn't make them any less a neighborhood. I can assure you that neighborhood will not be, they will not be swayed from their sense of deep commitment to each other and to that neighborhood just because their district lines are different. So, you know, when we talk about dividing neighborhoods up, Farmers Branch is only 12 square miles. We've divided this whole neighborhood, what is essentially a neighborhood, into 5 districts. We had to. And so that's where we're at. And it would be my tendency to respect the process and respect the fact that every single member of council at the time was given charge to appoint 2 people, 2 residents. They did their job. Then we asked them to come back and do their job again. They did, and their minds weren't changed. So I'm going to respect the committee's recommendations.
Councilmember Driscoll.
I'd also just like to thank you, Bronson, and all of the members of the Redistricting Committee. Some of them are here, some are not here. I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you put into this, and also Mr. Heath, for you and representation from your law firm. And I would just remind the public that I think you've been doing this across the state of Texas for different municipalities for, I think, something like 40 years.
Something like that.
So I think we've had the benefit of expert legal advice. And one thing I'd like to say, some people seem to be a bit dismissive, like, oh, we shouldn't worry about a lawsuit. Well, you know, when we think back several years, the city went all the way to the Supreme Court and spent millions of dollars on something. And I think one of our duties as elected officials is to protect the assets of the city, be that infrastructure, buildings, amenities, and also our financial assets. And so I don't take that lightly, and we all know what a litigious society we live in. I've heard that ever since I was a child, anyone can sue anyone for anything, made up or whatever. And so I think that is a serious responsibility that we have to avoid, or try to avoid, lawsuits for the city. As was stated at the very beginning of this process, all of us will lose some streets, some voters. We will gain some in areas that we don't know the people. And I would just like to remind everyone that this was a fair, democratic process. Each council person selected 2 appointees and an alternate for this committee. It was a diverse group, racially, economically, and that's what a democracy is about. And I know you took the charge very seriously. I attended, I think, the first meeting, and I've watched all of the meetings, all of the videos of them several times, including the last one when we reconstituted you to meet again. And we just had National Night Out a couple of weeks ago. At least half of the ones that I went to are in areas that I will lose. I will lose because they're on the east side of Webb Chapel. And that's an area that I worked very diligently and that helped elect me. So we are all affected by this. And so I think, you know, no district is being penalized. And as a matter of fact, both of the appointees that I selected and served on the committee, they both will go out of my district. And I think to show the impartiality, both of them mentioned to me during the process, well, it looks like we're not going to be in your district anymore, Driscoll. And I said, well, that's unfortunate, but this is a legal requirement to do the redistricting. And we didn't do the census, but we've got to deal with how the numbers came down. And our city is growing, and you know, I'm not happy to lose a lot of people that I got to know and that I've represented, but that's just a fact. And so we all have to deal with this. So there's a certain fairness with that. And there's, as you've mentioned, Mr. Heath and Bronson, a lot of different criteria you have to take into consideration. I'm glad I'm not an attorney and have to deal with that. But neighborhoods is one of the things, but there's several other criteria there. And I'd just also like to remind people, and those that have lived here for many, many years, that's wonderful, but our neighborhoods change. They go through change. People move in and out of all of the districts all of the time. People downsize, they right-size, et cetera, et cetera. So our neighborhoods and the voters are dynamic, and the city is growing, and it's going to continue to grow, and we will have new residents and new voters. And yeah, in summary, also, I'd just like to say, I served in 2016 and 2017, basically for a year on the Citizens Quality of Life Bond Committee. And we started off with, we had 18 people that served on that committee, all citizens from all parts of the city. And we had something like 30 different recommendations, maybe more than 30, that we heard from residents. We want this, we want this, we want this, we want that. We want a new library, we want a dog park, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we worked diligently for a year. And I was on 3 different subcommittees. And I met weekly, and so did several other people. We came up with 3 recommendations, and they were approved. And I think we have to respect the process. It's not going to make everyone happy. There were people that said, well, I really wish you'd put my project in the project that, you know, my friends and my neighborhood want. And we said, well, we're only going to recommend 3. And they were all approved. But I think it would be detrimental to asking citizens to volunteer and serve on boards and commissions in the future if we say, well, you worked for half a year, or in my case with the bond committee for a year, and then say, well, we're going to just dismiss that and go in a different direction because some people don't like it. So, you know, government is not perfect, but there is a process, and we have rules, we have resolutions, we have ordinances. Not everyone agree with them, but we have to have a functioning, regulated society. And no one is losing a vote. They might have a different person representing them. But, you know, as Mr. Merritt said, redistricting happens, and, you know, the Senate lines change, House lines change in the state and across the country. And this is a process we have to go through, but I also believe we need to respect the process. And it was unanimous when the committee was brought back together to approve the MAP 7. And so I think we need to respect the commission and also the legal advice that we've had from one of the best experts in the state.
Thank you, Councilmember Driscoll. From my current take, it seems that we don't have full consensus on how we want to move forward tonight, whether that's MAP 7, 8, or 9. And, you know, I have a sense of where everyone kind of is except one wild card, and that wild card said that they would, you know, like to maybe take another step and step back and take a look at it one more time. And so I think we have a lot to decide tonight. I would like to move forward with something as it relates to redistricting that everyone, I would like to move forward in something when we redistrict, the map that we choose that is going to have more consensus than most likely a 3-2 vote. And I think that's important for our city. It's important for the commission. It's important for everyone as we move forward. And I don't hear that here tonight. And so with that, in order to get to some of the other issues, knowing that we could go on for hours and hours and hours tonight around without taking a step back and rethinking about what it is we want and maybe what we might want the commission to do and go forward. And so from that standpoint, I'm going to make a motion to take no action tonight.
Mayor, And I don't want to interrupt, and I don't want to suggest that you postpone or don't postpone. That's up to the council. But if you do postpone, you need to put a pretty tight time frame on it, because if you have a May election, you got to call the election 78 days ahead of that, and filing can begin 30 days before. So you're looking at 108 days before the election. So you need to finish this probably by the end of the year.
That was going to be my recommendation,
And
is this
so-
will
so
be
I
resolved
just
by then.
don't want to suggest, don't do something that takes you beyond that.
I promise you it won't. So,
I want to make one comment real quick. We put a lot of time in this, and I have no problem going back, doing it again. I want to do it right. But one thing that I've struggled with a little bit, and I know we all have lives and whatnot, is there were times where not everyone was there, and that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. I went back and did the attendance for everyone, and it wasn't like I wanted to see it. We all had representation, all districts had representation, but I'd like to see more people there. I'd like to see more people. I know we all have lives. I know things happen, people get hurt, things like that happen, but I'd like, if we're going to do this, I'd like you all to put the pressure on the people that you chose to make sure that they're going to, if we need to do like one of those sign-up genies that we all agree on today, that's okay. But I'd like to make sure we have a little bit more participation, especially this last meeting. It was the least attended meeting of all, on our September 14th meeting.
okay. All right. Before we keep discussing, there is a motion on the table, and so
I second.
I have a second by Councilmember Williams, and now I will open up for more discussion. Councilmember Jackson.
I was just going to say thank you, Mr. Blackson, for bringing that up, because it's one thing that we haven't talked about tonight is the variable attendance throughout all of these meetings. And that last one was rather thinly attended. And I noticed there was quite a change in the makeup of the commission from one meeting to the next, depending on who could be there and who couldn't.
Right.
So in my mind, that damages our process, right? Because if I look at these maps 3 through 7, there's a couple of them where you can barely tell. There's 1 or 2 street difference between one map and another. And so it kind of looks like the process just picked up from the last meeting and went on to the next meeting. They really didn't start back at ground zero. Maps 1 and 2 were the only 2 that were very different from all the rest. And that was before you guys knew who the candidates were. So it is very important that we get full participation and engagement. And I would suggest that perhaps this is not a weeknight meeting. I hate to blow someone's Saturday or Sunday, but we need to allow time for this process to play out properly without taking too much time, as Mr. Heath suggested. Thank you, Mayor.
How many additional people do you all feel is the right amount to add to the group?
So on that comment, do you add anyone? Does that mess the process up? Or do we enforce the people that have suggest that they attend, opposed to, we had some people that didn't attend any meetings. They were just absences the entire time. So I didn't know that. I knew that kind of. I didn't realize it was every time until I put into a matrix. And I will send that to you. I didn't get it completed before. I had some questions about some of the data, and I wanted to go back and watch the meeting to see if I saw the face, opposed to, trusting anything. So it was one of those things that I'll definitely get that information sent out, because it's important. But I have opposition in adding someone, because I feel like that messes up. We've learned so much in the last 180 days of doing this, or more than that now, 500 hours of this, we have to start over teaching to map again and whatnot. So
Mayor, Mr. Heath answered my question I was going to pose to you about timing. It's super important that we understand that. And Bronson, you'll remember when we first met on this particular subject, wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for citizen engagement and kind of have an open meeting for that. We selected a pathway that basically said the meetings were open, they're videotaped, it's available for them. I think where we're at in these last hours, if you will, or we're headed toward the goal line, that we might need to still look at having an open meeting to explain in detail the ins and outs of this in a question and answer kind of perspective. I know that's kind of what I'm hearing, that there are opportunities for that, certainly a want from the community as we draw up another map. Or we're going to come back to what you pointed out. We move the map one street over, and now someone is upset that they didn't have an opportunity to opine on that. That's going to happen, don't get me wrong, but if we're still transparent as best we can, the best we can, we're not going to be able to meet everybody's want and desire on whatever day of the week this is going to be. It's going to happen, but it's going to be to the best of our ability.
Maybe part of the next meeting where the commission meets, we had 2 meetings where we had visitors. I think 4 people showed up for the entire time. And I understand people have things going on and whatnot, but maybe we change the venue. Maybe we make the venue either the library, we make the venue downstairs, and we make it a little bit bigger picture. And so there's, it's hard to get a lot of people up there, but, if we have an audience tonight, I would hope the same people would come back out to understand and see how the process works. Because once we put a map up there and we change one street, it all goes out.
People are going to learn about census blocks
real quickly.
Right. And this idea of splitting a street is going to be, there's no way around it. And so you're going to understand that. Unfortunately, it's going to be a hard learn, but it's going to happen quickly. So appreciate the flexibility, and I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion on this?
So I just have a question. I know that we have an attendance policy for our boards and commissions. Does that same policy extend to this committee?
All of them.
Okay. So then.
We can't afford to kick anyone off because we have to start over.
Okay.
Maybe we just.
Well, don't we have alternates that we can move into place?
We do. Right. We just need we have a quorum of 9. That's our quorum number. And then we need to at least have 1 representative from each district. So that's our second quorum item, is you got to have 1 from each. And that could be an alternate. Some meetings it was an alternate. So that was important.
Okay. Well, then I guess leave it to you all to charge your people to show up. Okay. Is there any more discussion? All right. I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time.
What's the motion?
Yeah.
I don't know what the motion is.
Okay. There we go. Motion passes unanimously.
I was reading over here.
Mr. Blackson, Mr. Heath, thank you again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Next is item H9. After discussion and study session, I think the motion that we're going to put on the table tonight is the motion to appoint Michael McGinnis to alternate 2 position for the Planning and Zoning Commission, to promote Ann Chrisman from alternate 1 to place 2 on the Historical Park and Preservation Board, and to promote Michael Rogan for alternate number 2. I believe that's what we discussed. Also, we need to promote Barbara Leedy to place 2 and David Reed to alternate number 1, and promote Tina Bennett Burton from alternate 2 to alternate position 1 as it relates to the Senior Advisory Board, and Barbara Leedy and David Reed were the Parks and Rec Board.
I second.
Oh, you second. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Roman. Is there any more discussion? I'll ask you all to make your vote at this time. Motion carries 3-2. take any action necessary as a result of the closed executive session. We have a few things to take care of here. I make a motion to approve the resignation of Councilmember Tracy Williams.
Second, Mayor.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor? Or I guess mark your vote at this time. Passes unanimously. Next, with the acceptance of the resignation of Councilmember Williams, the hearings under the City Charter Sections 2.02 and 2.19 for the removal of Councilmember Williams has become moot, and I move that the matter be closed without further action.
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Driscoll. Is there any more discussion? I'll ask you all to mark your vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. In light of the resignation of Councilmember Williams and the City Council's acceptance thereof, a vacancy has occurred in District 3. The City Council will have a special meeting on November 1st to call a special election to be held within 120 days to fill the vacancy. Council Member Williams will continue to serve until her successor is elected. And so with that, Councilmember Williams, I'll let you make any remarks that you wish.
Just to clarify, because I think there's been a lot of talk about my moving out of our district, and so I'll explain to our residents, and particularly to my District 3 residents, some clarification as just a point of reference. My husband and I put our house up for sale in May. Prior to putting the house up for sale, I spoke to the city manager at the time and informed him that there was this possibility that I would end up out of the district because the townhouses that we were purchasing were not ready to go under contract. I was advised at that time by the city manager that that was not a problem, that we only needed to be in the district 6 months prior to my election or re-election. That was our mistake, that we did not consult with legal prior to that. That was his understanding, and that was my understanding. Nothing was hidden from staff or was below board. I do everything above board. So later, when the house was sold and we went under contract, I informed the then city manager, the interim city manager, John Land, and told him, this is my understanding with Charles Cox. I just want you to be aware, and that way you know also, in case there's any question. And he said, not a problem. I'm just going to run this through legal, which is what I should have done from the very beginning. But that's neither here nor there. At that time, I was already under contract. We had already decided on where our family would move temporarily until our townhomes were available to go under contract. And we made a decision that was based on what was best for our family. Legal then, Pete got with me and informed me that that was not with the charter. And that there was going to be a problem. That I did have to serve continuously, and that he would advise me further depending on what I decided to do. The council was not informed of that at that moment because I tried my very best to figure out a solution that would ensure that I stayed in my district for continuity of government, if nothing else. So there was no moving at the stroke of midnight, although our movers did have us unpacking and unloading cars until way later than I had planned. But there was nothing nefarious about any of this. It was a personal matter, and it was a personal decision, and that's my right, whether an elected official or not, to have some personal family business handled just personal and just with my family. So I have been honored to serve. I will continue to be honored to serve what is one of the most amazing cities in the Metroplex. I have worked in this city for over 22 years,
and I've been a resident for over 16 years, and I will continue both of those things, whether I'm in District 1 right now or in District 3 in 18 months. I am a true resident of the city of Farmers Branch, and I've been honored to sit up here.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. And so the last item out of executive session, as you all know, we've been conducting a search for a new city manager. It's something that all of us here and previous council members have put a lot of time and energy into. I want to thank not only the council for their time, but staff for your amazing work putting a lot of the stuff together. I want to thank Afion for their efforts, and I want to thank our residents that were involved in the process in terms of meeting candidates, providing guidance, and pointing us in a direction forward as we look to the new city manager of Farmers Branch. And, you know, because of the feedback we received from numerous sources, feedback from residents, definitely feedback from staff, council has unanimously decided to not move forward with any of the candidates that have come forward to us. We didn't think that they were a great fit for Farmers Branch. They didn't think that they would embody what we wanted to see in a city manager, and that you all would look to and say, that was an excellent choice, and that's on us. And so we sat around the table today for quite some time, and we've had a lot of long discussions, and we have solutions that are gonna move us forward. We think we're gonna take a quick step back and let the candidate pool kind of mellow out a little bit. We think the way the job market has been lately, with so many people moving around, so many city managers being hired, that we think that, you know, maybe we need to let that settle out and see if some new candidates rise to the top in several months. But we have some amazing options inside of City Hall right now that are going to lead us forward in the interim as we move forward. And so we're excited about that opportunity. We all have looked to each other on how we're going to unite to make sure that that transition is a success. And we will reevaluate the possibility of going out to market again in the future to look for either a new city manager or potentially a promotion from someone within. So I just wanted to give the community a heads up and a full, just kind of, here's where we are in the process. There's nothing to hide. And until we find that perfect candidate that is going to continue to move Farmers Branch forward and take care of our residents, our businesses, and be just the individual that we want embodying the Farmers Branch brand, we're going to keep looking, because we owe it to all of you. And so just want to share that with you. We'll keep you updated as we move through that process, but want to thank you all. Seeing that we have no further business to conduct tonight, I will end tonight's meeting at 8:58 p.m. Good night, everyone.